Julie Weatherington Rice. I am a master's level geologist, hydrogeologist, doctorate level soil scientist. My expertise is chemistry and physics of earthen materials. I have been working with the interaction of oil and gas wastes and water supplies since 1977. I was bequeathed this topic by my hydrogeology professor, Dr. Wayne John, who did some of the original reporting and research on the Morrow County fiascos, and who sent me to do follow-up on that while I was working on my master's thesis, because the contamination came as far down as Westerville, Ohio. Alum Creek Dam was not in place yet, and the brines pouring into the groundwater and surface waters in Morrow County from the runaway drilling contaminated the water supply all the way down to Westerville. So I want to talk about the natural systems. Now, you know, we've got 300,000, close to 300,000 oil and gas wells that we've been drilling since 1860 in Ohio. We've got somewhere around and we don't know where most of those are. We have somewhere around 1 million drinking water wells. We have probably half of eastern Ohio hollowed out with underground coal mining. Lots of places for things to escape to and move into. But before all that happened, we have natural systems that affect Ohio, that affect all the earth, that really made the whole idea of injection wells not work anyway. We have in Ohio a Precambrian rift valley. This is like the Rift Valley in Africa, where a plate decides to split, and it splits in 3 ways, and one way fails, and the other 2 ways go. And the way that failed comes up through the New Madrid Fault from Missouri, which had the worst earthquakes ever measured in North America, up through Maysville, Kentucky, up through Cincinnati, on up to Grand Lake St. Mary's, where it splits and goes to Fort Wayne, and then goes on up to Lake Erie. And if you look at where the 3 functioning Class 1 injection wells are in the state of Ohio, they line up on that Rift Valley. They're AK Steel in Middletown. They're the Lima BP, which is now called something else, and the Victory site. The little town of Anna, Ohio, has had more earthquakes than any place else in the state of Ohio, going back as far as anybody has any records. But Ohio is underlain with faults and fractures, especially high-angle ones, all over the place. And that's because Ohio has gone up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down for eons. And every time the rocks move, because they're not rubber, they're brittle, they break. And all of those break zones become areas where fluids can cause earthquakes. And that's what we are seeing. The reason that the Class 1 wells work is because they're draining into this rift zone. No one has any idea where they're going. And of course, nobody's monitoring. Nobody looks. It's like it goes down this deep, dark hole. It's like it goes into a black hole and pops up in a parallel universe. But it doesn't. It goes down and it moves. And we don't know where it moves until something is lubricated enough to make it move. When we have a natural earthquake, you have the big quake because it's stress building, it releases, and then each additional quake is less and less and less. When they're man-made quakes, they reverse. They're small and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. We had a class 1 injection well established in Ashtabula County, and ODNR, Division of Geological Survey, told them not to put it there, told US EPA, do not permit it because you're on top of a major fault. But of course, nobody listens to the geologists of Ohio, never. And so, of course, they put them in, and in a few years, it started quaking. And as far as I know, that site continued to quake for another 10 or 15 years after that injection well was shut down. So we've had experiences with class 1 wells quaking. So when we started to have the experience with the class 2 wells, it wasn't like it was a big surprise. Everybody was expecting this to happen. So we've got the wonderful documentation that Dr. Ray pulled together, and thank you, Susie, for sending me that database. He has had documentation of over 1,000 quakes for the few short years that he was working on that data. We still have ongoing data being derived from the Lamont Doherty lab, from US Geological Survey, and from the Miami of Ohio University. No one is collecting that, but they could update it. We were over 1,000. With Ray's data, that ended in 2017. How many more? Well, we keep hearing about earthquakes, so we know there are more. We have the situation of the earthquakes down in Washington County. And where were those injection wells? Well, they were right down the road from the Burning Springs anticline. Now, why was it called the Burning Springs anticline? It was called the Burning Springs anticline because gas came to the surface and you could light it on fire. So who was so brilliant to think that that area would be secure enough to put an injection well? An anticline is an arched facility and it is fractured. Anybody with any basic geology at all should have known that that was not a good idea to put in a saltwater injection well. But under the years, especially the Tom Tomastic was in charge, if you wanted an injection well, you could get it, and you could get it in 3 months. If you wanted one from US EPA, you could get it, but it might take you 3 years. But, oh, we could put injection wells so fast. And that's what happened. So Ohio is just rift with fault systems. It's rift with fractures. It's rift with all kinds of places that if you inject, you're going to get movement. We've got a well that Teresa talks to me about in, I believe it's Athens County, that's down in Ohio Shale. And Ohio Shale is the formation, the bottom of it is the Marcellus, which is so tight that you have to fracture this stuff to get anything out of it. But there's a saltwater injection well down there that literally is working on gravity drain. That's impossible, but it's happening. So clearly we have people totally ignoring basic Ohio subsurface geology and just simply making random decisions that things will work without checking to see if they will. And then in the case of Youngstown, when you discover you've got yet another fault system that you didn't know about because you started quaking, instead of immediately shutting down and saying, okay, we stop here, no, we keep nursing it along. And we keep going, oh, well, if we only do this much pressure, it won't be a problem. This stuff is going somewhere. It has to, because full is full. And if you keep pouring into full, you will move. And where you will move, since you're not monitoring and you're not checking, no one knows, but it's going. So we have no idea where we are harming the environment. Is it bubbling up under the Ohio River? Possibly. Is it bubbling up through the old oil and gas wells that are underneath all of the reservoirs up there? Yeah, that's real possible. I mean, the possibilities are infinitesimal. But if you don't look, you don't find it. And if you deny that the geology is there, you approve anything. When you have those cavalier expectations, you can only produce disasters.